This program is brought to you by the partners of A Rood Awakening International. Help others find truth. Support A Rood Awakening International today.
The early Gentile believers thought that they had to follow man's rules to be saved. Are you caught in that same trap? You know, it's a lot simpler than you think, and Michael Rood reveals what it means to be grafted in tonight, because it's the end of the sixth day, the sun has set, and this is Shabbat Night Live. Well, Shabbat Shalom, Torah fans. Welcome to Shabbat Night Live with Michael Rood. This is episode 3 of The Blindness of the Gentiles, volume 2. Now, if you are currently questioning the rules or beliefs in your church that you just can't seem to find in the Bible, like the situation I was in 14 years ago, or if you have friends in the situation, well, this episode is for you. Michael Rood is about to make it crystal clear what you need to do as a believer and what you do not need to do. And trust me, it is a lot simpler than you think. And that's what I like. I keep it simple. I teach people health really simply. And David Robinson, welcome to Shabbat Night Live. You teach simple ways to keep marriage easy and flowing. So easier is better. What's a marriage tip that you can give to us real quick?
Oh, wow. Put me on the spot. Yeah, because all of them are so very important. But one that, I think is overlooked is serve without expectation. So in other words, giving of yourself, because, like in our world today, it is a world that generally runs on the concept of you scratch my back and I'll scratch your back, right? So we expect something in return. So, but to serve your spouse without expectation, in Luke 6:34 and 35, it says, if you lend to those for whom you expect to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners in order to receive back the same amount. And then it goes on talking about loving your enemies. But he also goes on to say in Luke 14, he says that to the one who had invited him into his house, he says, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do you invite your friends? He says, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors. Otherwise, they may also invite you in return. So there's this repayment mentality in society and the way that we live our lives in general in our culture. But if we are to serve and to have a Christ-centered marriage, we are to give to our spouse without expectation. So that can be really hard to do because most people go, well, I did this for you and I did this for you and I'm not getting things back in return. The Father wants us to give freely. And love gives freely. So,
and we need to do that more often than we think, because sometimes if we don't do that, as a rule, the spouse thinks, well, what do you want? Right? If it doesn't become a habit, then it's like, well, you're just giving to get something, and you're not out of that loop of expecting to receive something.
Exactly. And you know what? When you really get down to the core of it, we are all serving ourselves. In other words, our interest, we have our best interest. Even if we try, we still have a natural mechanism within us that protects ourselves. And when you become hurt and then resentment builds, and when resentment builds, you lose respect. That's where you get into this mentality of serving with expectation, and so that's part of one of the other tips, is having respect for each other and showing respect. But it is really difficult, and it is something that you have to practice. It's just like being good in sports. You have to practice. Whatever you're wanting to do, play guitar, you got to practice to be good at it. And so you have to put these tips that we're talking about, serve without expectation in this instance, write it on your brain, and then it'll seep to your heart as you continue to do it.
I really have to hand it to our supporters of A Rood Awakening International, because, or our partners, as we like to call them. You're also in partner services, and I'm thinking of them as you're talking about this because they give without expectation. I mean, they give even with the tax laws now, it's not even really in their best interest. They're not really going to get, most of them are not going to get a tax receipt that's of any benefit to them for giving to the ministry, yet they keep giving. And we just really appreciate them. And that's why, even though they don't expect anything back, we give them something anyway. And that's what we call our love gift, right?
Right.
And so today being July 31st, we switch up this love gift every month. And so today is the last day to get Michael Rood's special teaching on the Samaritans. And that is the love gift for this month. Michael says that, whoever supports this ministry, I want to give them something. This is not a DVD or a Blu-ray that you buy. This is if you donate through the Love Gift program and say, hey, I want to give at least $50 a month or $100 this month. It doesn't have to be every month, just whatever month, or $300. We have different gifts that we want to give you just to thank you for supporting us. Not that you're expecting anything, but we want to give you something anyway. And so, David, I want to thank you, first of all, for picking out these really neat gifts to go along with Michael's teachings. I think people really appreciate them.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I enjoy doing it. I try to find things that I think will be meaningful to our partners, and because this isn't a cliche. Okay, you'd think everybody in ministry, when they're speaking to their donors, oh, you're the best. We truly feel here that we have the best partners that any ministry could have. We really do, and we're just blown away by testimonies and talking to people on the phones. And it's just such a blessing to serve people that are so eager and hungry to get this message out.
And I can even speak to that from the health point of view. We have a little health show here we call The Health Awakening, and I've got my own little health thing at home. And folks from this ministry support even that. Even if they don't necessarily agree with what we're saying about health, they still support it. They still cheer us on. And so I really want to appreciate, I really appreciate that.
I think we're all more healthy here, Scott, because of you. Not only do you do it for our partners, but hey, everybody out there, he helps everybody here too. So,
well, we got to keep going somehow, right? So, so today is the last day for that gift. You get the Samaritans, which is Michael's new teaching, awesome teaching on what is behind the Samaritans. Who were these people? Why did their neighbors hate them so much? And what was so weird about Yeshua talking to this woman at the well, which was last month's teaching. And so along with that, you get a Shabbat picnic bag. Now, this is an insulated picnic bag with the name of Yehovah on the front. It's a one of a kind. You're not going to find this, at Walmart or something like that. You have to get it from a Rood Awakening. It's a great thing. People look at that and go, what is that Hebrew writing? You can tell them it's the Hebrew name of Yehovah and why that's so important for a believer to know, and all the domino effects that it has for their health, for their faith and their health, for a matter. It depends on what you put in the picture.
Yeah, just a side note, it works really well. I left my lunch. It came out of the fridge, left it. It was in the bag, and left it in the truck. And I was like, oh no, a mayonnaise on the sandwich and all this kind of stuff. And it stayed cool. So it actually works.
Well, there you go. It is good for your health. I slipped up, but really it has some purpose there. You also get silver-plated bookends that feature a picture of ancient Jerusalem, and it says Jerusalem on one side and Yerushalayim in Hebrew on the other. Great thing to put on your shelf. And again, people say, what is that thing? Opens up the door to talk about your faith. Just great things. And we have more stuff coming up in August. Look for it. It's going to be a lot of fun. And right now, as a matter of fact, so there's a new love gift in August, but there's also some sales that we're having in August. And speaking of sales, it's the last few days to get 50% off the annual membership to the michaelrood.tv app. This has been going like gangbusters because we have new episodes on there that are not going to be featured on Shabbat Night Live. They're not going to be on YouTube. I'm thinking of Errors in the Bible, just released on Wednesday. This is a new series you're not going to see anywhere but on the app. And I mean nowhere, because Nehemiah is sharing some manuscripts that he is not allowed to show publicly on the web or on YouTube, but because it's going to a select group on our app, he's able to show it, and you'll be the first in the world to see these errors on ancient manuscripts that no one else has seen.
Very really exciting stuff, and you guys will really enjoy that.
It is. Yes. Thank you for joining us today, David. Really appreciate that. Well, the early Gentile believers thought that they had to follow man's rules to be saved, but that wasn't the case. Find out with episode 3 of Blindness of the Gentiles, volume 2, coming up. When Yeshua encountered the Samaritan woman at the well, his disciples were shocked. But why? Who were the Samaritans? And what lessons can the mistakes of the Samaritans teach us today about the right way to follow the Almighty? Michael Rood presents The Samaritans, the little-known background story of a Gentile people whose lifestyle serves as a warning for the Christian world today.
You're going to find out as we dig deeper exactly where these people are coming from and how they have added to the Torah 267 significant changes so that they have a state religion.
The Samaritans is an exclusive teaching you won't see anywhere online. The only way to get it is to receive it as our gift, to say thank you for supporting A Rood Awakening International. Donate a $50 love gift to the ministry, and we'll send you this exclusive teaching on DVD or Blu-ray. Or for a donation of $100, we'll send you The Samaritans plus an insulated Shabbat picnic bag bearing the Hebrew name of Yehovah. Or as a special offer for a donation of $300, we'll send you The Samaritans, the insulated Shabbat picnic bag, and a dazzling set of silver-plated bookends featuring a depiction of ancient Jerusalem and the name of the city in both English and Hebrew on the city wall. These gifts are available only in July and only while supplies last. Get The Samaritans teaching for a love gift donation of $50, the teaching and the insulated Shabbat picnic bag for a donation of $100. Or get the teaching, the picnic bag, and the silver-plated bookends depicting ancient Jerusalem for a donation of $300. Hurry, offer ends July 31st while supplies last. Call 888-766-3610. That's 888-766-3610. Or visit monthlylovegift.com. If you like what you see on Shabbat Night Live, you'll love the bonus episodes, now available only on the michaelrood.tv app. These bonus episodes dive deep to give you more serious study, cutting-edge content, and righteous raves you won't find anywhere else. It's Michael Rood Uncut. Sign up now to get the michaelrood.tv app free for 14 days. It's everything Michael Rood, plus all new bonus episodes you won't find anywhere else. Sign up to watch now at michaelrood.tv.
The Apostle Paul said that Yeshua nailed the dogmas, the doctrines and commandments of men, of the arche and exousia, that he overcame, that he nailed their commandments, their man-made dogmas to the cross. And because of that, we are not to allow any of the arche and exousia, any of the religious authorities of men who made up their own commandments to judge us. Because every one of the feasts of the Lord are prophetic shadow pictures of good things to come. So don't let any pagan, let no religious authority judge you concerning the Sabbath, the new moons. And on the Sabbath, we do not allow the world to judge us and tell us what to do. We know that Yeshua paid the price for us. And the last night he was with his disciples when he took the bread and he blessed the Most High with this blessing, Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. He said, this represents my body, which is now broken for you. As often as you do this, you do it in remembrance of him. And then Yeshua took the cup and he said, this represents the renewed covenant in my blood. This is what this represents. This is what it's always represented. Do this in remembrance of me. And he said that prayer Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our God, King of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine. And he said, do this in remembrance of me, and don't let anyone disparage you. Do this until I come again, because I have made you priests and kings. Shabbat shalom. To understand the book of the Acts of the Jewish apostles and the blindness of the Gentiles, we need to go into the book of Acts to see that Shaul, Paul, goes to Corinth, and it is at Corinth that he makes quite an impression. In fact, the believers at Corinth write to Shaul, and at this point he is called Paul because of what has transpired on the island of Cyprus earlier in the book of Acts. But they write to him, and he writes back addressing certain things to these Gentile converts, these Gentiles who have been baptized into Israel, because they've been baptized in the name of Yeshua for the remission of their sins, and they have been grafted into Israel. But as Paul writes, that the Gentiles are without God and without hope in this world. They were raised without the Torah. They were raised in a pagan culture, and they really need to be transformed by the renewing of their minds, that they may prove which is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. And as he says, to prove all things and hold fast to that which is true. That word prove is a mathematical term. It is a mathematical proof. There are things that need to be counted, things that need to be put in order, and what needs to be put in order are first things first. God's commandments that were given to the mixed multitude at the base of Mount Sinai were given to a group of Israelites and Gentiles, a mixed multitude who came out of Egypt, but were then baptized in the Red Sea, followed Moses to the base of the mountain, and that is where, coming out of the other side of the Red Sea, they were all Israel at that point. And so now we understand that whole figure in baptism is that the past is dead, it's washed away, it's gone. Pharaoh's army and all the entrapments and all the accoutrements of Egypt, all the luxuries, all of that has been in the past, and now we are heading toward the promised land. But first of all, we stop off at the mountain, and that is where the Almighty shouts down his 10 commandments, no longer to a mixed multitude, because we are all Israel. And as we are gathered at the base of that mountain, this is the first time the word church, ecclesia, is used in the Bible. It is found in the Septuagint, in the Greek translation of the Torah. So it is in Exodus in 19 that we see that the ecclesia, the assembly, gathered at the base of the mountain to hear the commandments of the Almighty. And we have already said, all that Yehovah, our God, says, we promise we will obey. We will hear and we will obey. And so Moses then later tells that same congregation that the Almighty is going to send another prophet in the future. And that prophet, like Moses, will hear directly from heaven, and the people are required to shema, required to hear and obey that prophet. And that prophet is required to judge those people according to what he hears from the throne room. And so it is really a double obedience and a double qualification there, that this prophet will only speak that which he hears from the throne. He will never speak presumptuously. And the people are required to hear and obey that prophet and whatsoever he hears. And then that prophet is required to judge those people that he speaks the word to and judge them according to their compliance or non-compliance. And we see that in Yeshua's own words and in Peter's words in the book of Acts, Yeshua is going to be required to destroy those who refuse to hear and obey him. And so that is why Yeshua says, he that hears and obeys and is baptized will be saved. He that does not hear and obey and is not baptized will be destroyed, because that is the final end of the judgment. And so everyone has a choice. We've only got one life, only have one chance, one life to live, and it's either an obedience to what Yeshua said, and so then we have the promise of eternal life, or we don't. And this is not just a simple, repeat after me prayer. I accept Jesus as my Savior. That's nothing. That is nothing. No, we confess him as Lord. This is the word of faith that we preach. As Paul said, if we confess with our mouth the Lord Yeshua, believe in our heart, God that was raised from the dead, we shall be saved. Thou shalt be saved. Sozo thing. Thou shalt. When the captain of our salvation returns and raises our rotted body from the grave, or our mortal body puts on immortality, at that point we are saved. He will save us. The captain of our salvation will return and save us. But nobody is saved now. Nobody is born again now. Well, okay, the 24 elders who are raised and seated at the right hand, okay, they have been born again. Yeshua, when he came out of the grave, as Revelation chapter 1 says, he is the firstborn from among the dead. The firstborn. King James says first begotten. Wrong translation, it's firstborn from among the dead. And so that whole picture of being born again, being saved, and that is when it comes to pass that the captain of our salvation returns to rescue us and to save us, either out of great tribulation or out of the grave, and our dead, mortal, rotted body is then raised, and then we all go together to the sea of fire and glass for the judgment seat of Messiah. And we'll be judged for reward or for loss. If we suffer loss, it will be a tragedy. There will be weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth for lost opportunity, because that's it. We get one life and we are rewarded for all of eternity for what we do in this one life. If we've done nothing and all of our works are for naught and are burned, we will suffer loss. And that loss will be for all of eternity. So you want a higher standard of living in the kingdom that Yeshua establishes upon the earth, then we work now. See, reward is of merit. Salvation is by grace, but reward is of merit. And this is something that basically the Christian church has walked completely away from and wants to take no responsibility for. They want to think that just a quick repeat after me prayer, a pat on the rear end and a Gospel of John takes care of everything. And now we get to go to heaven and sprout wings and live happily ever after in the heavens. And it's like, that is not even in the Bible. It's just, this is the fairy tale of gospel quartets who get paid a lot of money for singing gospel songs but never read the Bible. I'm not going to be satisfied with that. I don't want to be judged. And I know that gospel quartets are not going to be sitting on the throne judging me whether I'm going to be rewarded or whether I'm going to suffer loss. Yeshua is the judge. He is the one that is required to do that. So in Corinth, we've got a lot of Gentiles here, a lot of Gentiles coming to faith, and these Gentiles, are baptized in Yeshua. They are grafted into Israel, but they're still Gentiles. Their whole life, their whole makeup, they have just been, they've been in pagan temples their whole life, and it is a thing that Shaul's going to have to rectify with them because they're all over the map on so many issues. And so in chapter 12, verse 1, we read, "Now concerning spiritual matters," the word gifts again. We covered this on our last episode. The word gifts is not there. And once you add the word gifts in there, and then we have the whole charismatic or the gifts movement, in which, it's a gift of speaking in tongues, it's a gift of prophecy, it's a gift of this, it's a gift of that. Nonsense. It is absolutely a twisting of the scripture because they added the word gifts in here in italics. It's not to be there. Paul is dealing with this. Now, concerning spiritual matters, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. And so he's going to have to give some instruction because they are ignorant. They are ignorant. They've exemplified their ignorance. Their stupidity has become legendary. These Gentiles in Corinth, they are legendary idiots. They're ignorant. And you have to realize, you know you were Gentiles. You were carried away into these dumb idols, even as you were led. Wherefore? Why for the wherefore? This is why. Wherefore, verse 3, I give you to understand that no man speaking by the Spirit of God calls Jesus or Yeshua accursed. No man speaking by the Spirit of God calls Yeshua accursed. Now, this is a problem that is going on by this time in the book of Acts. It has become rampant. The Gentiles have always been welcome to come into the synagogues. And we're going to read throughout the book of the Acts that the Gentiles coming into the synagogues, sometimes the Gentiles would light up when they would hear Paul teach the word, Paul and Barnabas teach the word, and then it causes the Jews jealousy, and then the Jews fight against Paul and Barnabas and fight against the Gentiles and stir up evil men of disrepute, mafia-type figures to assault them. And what do they call it? King James, they are men of ill repute. We'll leave it at that for right now until the King James term comes to my mind. But we see that in the synagogue, the Gentiles have always been welcome to come into the synagogue, but there are ramifications for this. The ramifications are in the Torah, that the Gentiles who are turning to God, they can't be bringing in their pagan idolatry. They can't bring in their sexual perversion. They can't be eating unclean meat. Now, of course, in that culture, there is nobody's eating dog, pig, cat, rat, and bat. That doesn't exist. But they would kill animals and like sheep and strangle them, keep the blood in them, and so the blood stays in them and it contaminates them. And we are told in the scriptures that we are not to eat the blood and not to eat flesh with blood in it, because the life of the flesh is in the blood. If the animal has a disease, it's carried in the blood and is to be poured out into the earth. That way, if you obey the commandments, none of the diseases of the Egyptians or the Gentiles will come into the household of faith. And so in order for Gentiles to come into the synagogue, they can't be participating in eating things with blood in it, eating blood, eating unclean animals. That they're all in the same category as what we would say unkosher, abominations. You're not. It's an abomination to eat blood. Don't do it. God says don't do it. And I don't want you spreading disease among my people, so you stay out of it. And so the different things in fornication or erva matters, things that are sexually prohibited by the Torah. Gentiles coming in the synagogue, they have got to be clean of these things. And so we throughout the book of Acts, we see the Gentiles have been coming in. Antioch, that's where a big revival, Gentiles coming in to the faith comes into that. And so what we see happening is that in the synagogues in Israel and round about, then because of the number of believers in Yeshua that is coming into the synagogues, this is when the Pharisees institute a 19th benediction in their prayers, which is basically the 18 benedictions of prayer that is spoken. They added a 19th benediction, a 19th blessing, but it's really not a blessing. It is the curse of the Menim. And this is when everyone is reciting these prayers together, and the 19th is a curse of the followers of Yeshua. And so those followers of Yeshua who are in the synagogue, then if they do not open their mouth and curse themselves by saying this blessing, they are automatically outed. It's kind of like the the mark of the beast. Okay, if you will say this and curse yourself, then you can stay in the synagogue and it's okay. But if you are found not to curse yourself as a menim, as a follower of Yeshua, if you're found out that you didn't curse yourself, then you're outed and then you're put out of the synagogue. So this is how they cured the rabbinic Judaism, cured the believers from continuing to infiltrate into the synagogue. Now, when I say continuing to infiltrate, I want to read this this section out of Acts 15. Acts 15. Acts 15, verse 19. Wherefore, my sentence is, and this is James speaking, why for, or this is the reason why my sentence is going to be this. Now, when we see this why for, you know, this is the reason why. He goes on before this, and this is when the believers from Antioch, Paul, Barnabas, Luke, they come down to Jerusalem to deal with this question, because there are Pharisees in Jerusalem who become believers. And we read about this in the opening verse of Acts chapter 15. It's very important that you understand this. This is why you have to read the whole context here. So there are Pharisees who become believers. They go up to Antioch, and they go up there, and there is a great revival that is happening. Paul and, at this point, it's Shaul and Barnabas. They have been there for an entire year at this point, and even longer. They've been up there, and there are so many Gentiles who are coming to faith up there. Now, you have these Pharisees who become believers, who they then go up there to this big revival. And they go up there and say, these Gentiles are not even saved. They have not gone through the proper protocol that is required by the Pharisees for Gentiles to become proselytes. And this is something they have been raised with their whole life, that Gentiles don't understand this. That for a Gentile to come into the household of faith, to be accepted, and to be able to come into the synagogue as more or less a full member, but yet they're not really a full member, because they are required not to keep the Sabbath or to keep the feast. They don't want Gentiles to really be fully grafted into Israel. And so what these Gentiles do to become proselytes is they must appear before a rabbinic court, and they must declare to this rabbinic court that Moses gave us the 7 Noahide laws. Now, these 7 Noahide laws are pure made up, I'll just say it nicely. They're just made up. They made them up, and they make the Gentiles confess that Moses gave us these 7 Noahide laws. And if they will confess that before a rabbinic court, then the Gentiles can be part of the household of faith, even though they're an associate member, not really fully grafted in, just an associate member. This Messianic Judaism cult does the same thing. Unless you can prove that you've got, your great-great-grandmother lit candles on somebody's birthday back 7 generations ago, unless you can prove you're that much Jewish, you can't really be a full member of the body of Messiah in this Messianic congregation. You can only be an associate member because you're not really Jewish enough to qualify. And so that's why this Messianic Judaism cult, and that's what it is. I think that's what Michael Brown talks about, this Messianic Judaism. There can be no Messianic version of Judaism. Judaism is ancient Phariseeism. There's no Messianic version of what Yeshua said don't do, don't follow, don't keep their takanot. But, they've got a hybrid thing that they worked on. And so they've got their own little cult that in order to be a part of this cult as a Gentile, then you have to do some other shtick with them. But you're only an associate member. That's the way it was back here in the book of Acts, Acts chapter 15. So these Pharisees who become believers go up there and say, these Gentiles, even though they are speaking in tongues, even though they are manifesting the Holy Spirit by the same manifestation that we saw among the apostles on the day of Pentecost years before, they really are not fully grafted in. They're not a full member. They're not really proselytes because they haven't appeared before a rabbinic court. And until they do that, then they can't be immersed. And then they can't be a full member. So they have to be immersed, but after they have confessed before a rabbinic court that Moses gave us the 7 Noahide laws. So that is the shtick. Paul, Barnabas, they come down to Jerusalem. They give the report. And then James quotes the prophets. He quotes the promise to the prophet Amos. He quotes that prophet who talks about the Gentiles coming to the temple and coming to the tabernacle of David, which will be rebuilt. This is a prophecy that the tabernacle of David, that tabernacle, which at the time Solomon's temple was built, was disassembled. It was stored in a stone chamber on the Temple Mount because it was the Holy of Holies during the time of King David until the temple was built. And then that tabernacle was then taken by Jeremiah with the Ark of the Covenant, the table of showbread, and the articles of furniture and hidden away in a cave just before the siege of Nebuzaradan and the destruction of Solomon's temple. Amos, the prophet, Amos said that the tabernacle of David, which was in that cave, hidden by Jeremiah, that will be rebuilt, and the Gentiles will come to that when it is rebuilt. And this is part of the whole latter rain, all part of the day of Yehovah, when the Ark of the Covenant is revealed, the cloud of glory is seen above the mercy seat. And when these things are confirmed, the confirmation of the covenant of which Daniel speaks. And so James is quoting this, and then he said, this is why. My sentence is this, that we trouble not them, verse 19 continuing, which from among the Gentiles are turning to God. Turn to God, it's wrong in King James. It's turning. The Gentiles are turning to God. They're turning. It's not like they've turned the corner and everything is just hunky-dory. No, they were raised as Gentiles. They still have work to do. They still have the Torah to learn. They're turning to God. Their heart's desire is to come into the synagogue and learn. And so they are turning from God. And so we're not going to trouble them any further, which are turning to God, but we write to them that they do what? They abstain from the pollutions of idolatry. Number one, that's in the Torah. He is not pulling this out of the thin blue sky. That's in the Torah. This has always been the provision for Gentiles to come into the synagogue. This is nothing new. So we're not going to give these Gentiles any new thing who are coming, turning to God through Yeshua and coming in. That they abstain from pollutions of idolatry and from fornication. Now, that word fornication is erva matters. Things that are forbidden. They are sexual abominations. They are absolutely forbidden according to the scripture. And among these things are, well, we could go right down LGBTQRST, LMSFT, you name it, the acronym. These things that are abominations to God, that they're to abstain from that. If they will not abstain from these things, they don't come in. They don't come in. We're not to be so seeker-friendly that you just come in just as you are. No, you don't come in just as you are. You want to enter into this fellowship. We don't want the pollutions of idolatry, the pollutions of sexual perversion, and the diseases that the homosexuals, the sodomites carry with them. We don't want those entering in. We don't want, and we'll continue on. And from things strangled and blood. Things strangled and from blood. Now, again, this is the whole category of abominations. Things that are strangled and their blood. And that's, of course, it would be no dog, pig, cat, rat, bat, lizard, tarantula, none of these things would ever be allowed because they carry with them disease. And so if you don't want those things, you keep those people out from the fellowship. Verse 21, for Moses from old time has in every city them that preach him, being read in the synagogues every Sabbath day. The Gentiles turning to God, they're welcome to come into the synagogue. And this is where they can learn, because Moses is read every Sabbath day. Okay, they're also going to be kind of subjected to some of the rabbinic mishigas and all, but that's not what we follow. Yeshua said, the scribes and Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. Whatsoever he says do, but do not follow. They're talking masim, for they say, but they do not do. They say they follow Moses, but they don't do what Moses said to do. So to understand what Moses said, to understand the commandments and how we are to live, how to live the way, the truth, and life, how we are to follow Moses and to follow him the way that Yeshua said to follow him and Moses said, you don't add to and you don't subtract from these commandments. If you add to them, the plagues written in the book of the Revelation will be added to you. The diseases of the Gentiles will be added to you. If you subtract from the words of Moses, then your name will be subtracted from the book of life. And so, this is what his sentence is. And this is what they wrote to the believers. And this is what Paul and Barnabas, and they took around to all the assemblies, all these congregations that all started with a bunch of Gentiles in these Jewish synagogues all over Asia Minor. And they went back and they rehearsed these things in their ears, and the people had great joy and understanding that they don't have to keep all this rabbinic mishigas, and that they are filled with the Holy Spirit. There's nothing more that they have to do. They have been grafted into Israel through baptism into identification with Yeshua as the Messiah. Just as we were all baptized by Moses in the Red Sea, now we're baptized by Yeshua and to his death, burial, resurrection, and grafted into Israel. And so now, we're going to go back. Verse 3, we're going back here, and this is 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Wherefore, this is why I give you to understand, because I don't want you to be ignorant of spiritual matters. And these are all spiritual matters. These are not spiritual gifts, spiritual matters, that no man speaking by the Spirit of God calls Yeshua accursed. And so when they want you in these synagogues to pronounce the 19th benediction, no, you're not going to do it. And these people that make you do this, that want you to do this, and they want you to curse Yeshua, and they want you to curse yourself, they're not speaking by the Spirit of God. I want you to understand this, and this is what he's telling these Gentiles. When you go into the synagogue and they want you to pronounce this blessing or this curse against you and this curse against Yeshua, you know that this is not of God. You may want to go in there and learn the Torah, because not everyone is going to have, no one's got a Torah scroll in their house. Where else are you going to learn about this? You have to go to a synagogue in your community where there is a Torah scroll, where you can hear and learn about the Torah. But you are not to contaminate yourself with their rabbinic mishigas. Now, that's one thing. That's one thing about the 19th benediction. How about the other one? They don't call him Yeshua. They say Yeshu. It is an acronym for may his name be blotted out. It's not Yeshua, it's Yeshu. May his name be blotted out. And those in the synagogues who call him Yeshu, may his name be blotted out. I'm letting you know right now that no man speaking by the Spirit of God calls Yeshua accursed, that his name may be blotted out, that he's not the Son of God, may his name be blotted out. They're not speaking by the Spirit of God. These people are not to be your teachers. You don't go into the synagogues and learn from these people that are saying, may his name be blotted out. If you do, then you are contaminating yourself. And this right now in Europe, this is reaching at apocalyptic proportions. And I am hearing that a number of women are actually doing this. They want to feel Jewish. They're Gentiles, but they want to attach themselves and they want to feel Jewish. And so they're going into the synagogue and they're learning from the rabbis who are teaching the Torah. But these rabbis are turning them against Yeshua. They are calling him Yeshu. May his name be blotted out. They are saying these 19 benedictions, the 19th being the curse against those followers of Yeshua. I want you to know, and I'm telling you, those who call Yeshua cursed, they're not speaking by the Spirit of God. They do not have the Spirit of God. They think they're leaders. They think they're knowledgeable ones of Israel. No, they're not. They're not speaking by the Spirit of God. They don't have the Spirit of God. They're speaking by a different spirit. So no one that calls him accursed, no one who says his name be blotted out, no one who curses him or causes you to curse yourself because you follower of Yeshua, you are not to submit yourself, you're not to subject yourself to them. You're not to take the mark of the beast so that you fall in line with them. You're not to convert to Judaism so that you can feel more Jewish, so that you can be part of Judaism. You cannot be more Jewish than being baptized in the name of Yeshua. It's impossible. And then you learn the commandments and do and follow Moses as Yeshua followed Moses and as Paul followed Yeshua. Understand and know the gospel of the kingdom. Yeah, you're going to have to purge yourself away from paganized churchianity, paganized Christianity. You're going to have to purge yourself. You're going to have to renew your mind because you have been fed a whole line of bull. And then he says, and I want you to understand, continue on, that no man can say that Jesus, Yeshua, is Lord, but by the Holy Spirit. And what is this Lord? No one can say that Yeshua is Yehovah. Yehovah. Capital L-O-R-D. Yehovah, Tsevaot, except by the Holy Spirit. You cannot put together the prophecies and see that Yeshua is that who will reign as Yehovah Tsevaot, the son of David, who will be raised from the dead, who will reign and live as the Kohen Gadol forever because he has an endless life. He who will sit on the throne of David and reign and rule for 1,000 years. He who the nations of the earth are required to come up and worship the King, Yehovah Tsevaot, at his birthday party in Jerusalem, the Feast of Tabernacles, as he reigns and rules for 1,000 years. All of these things, no one can say that Yeshua is Yehovah Tsevaot. Yehovah is one, and his name will be one in those days, because all power, all authority has been given to him. All authority and power. The Father has put all things under the Son. And this is what we read about, as Paul writes in 1 Corinthians, every man will be made alive in his own order. Why is it there are some of you that says there is no resurrection? That's ridiculous. No, every man will be made alive in his own order. Messiah, the firstborn from among the dead. The firstfruits, those who Yeshua raised. After that, those who are Messiahs at his coming, when he comes and raises the dead and changes the mortal into immortality. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, gathered together at the sea of fire and glass, where we'll then be rewarded or judged for loss. Then the marriage supper of the Lamb, then we come back with Yeshua and reign for 1,000 years, and at the end of the 1,000 years, then the end resurrection, when everyone who has not been yet made alive, those who are not Messiahs that is coming, those who are not the 24 elders, those who are not the Messiah, those who have not been raised are going to be raised, and that is going to be the final resurrection. And then he reigns as a new heaven and a new earth, and he reigns forever and ever and ever. And God in the Lamb tabernacle with men. This is the very thing that we see that Paul lays out. Every man is going to be made alive in his own order. And this is what we need to renew our mind and realize that eternity depends on what we do now. Remember, salvation is a gift. Reward is of merit. Live so that others can see your good works, glorify your Father in heaven, and so Yeshua will say in one day, good job, well done, faithful servant. Join us again next time as we continue to take the blinders off the Gentiles in the book of Acts. Shalom, Torah fans. Give this video a thumbs up and share it with a friend. Tap the subscription button and the bell icon, and I promise to update weekly with in-depth biblical research. Be sure to download the new michaelrood.tv app for both mobile and home devices for even more commercial-free content.